Alrighty, so now we've got our training split and validation split. Our X values are the file paths to our images, and our Y values, the labels, are Boolean NumPy representations of the labels. And so what we have to do now is, since our labels are already in a numeric format, we have to convert our images into numbers, or at least create a function to do so for us. So let's create a little heading for that. We'll make it pre-processing images, turning images into tensors. So we're kind of officially getting started on this step here. And now when I say turning images into tensors, this is a common theme you'll have no matter what kind of data you're working on. So even if it's not images, if it's something like an audio file or it's a text passage, you're still going to have to turn it into tensors if you're working with TensorFlow. And remember, tensors are a numerical representation, kind of like a matrix. All right, so what's one way we could do this? Again, rather than pre-processing our images in the notebook, we might pre-process them only when we need to, because manipulating file paths is a lot easier than manipulating an image because it's working with less data. So because we've already got the file paths, I'm going to keep this theme for the rest of this project. And I'm saying might do, we're going to do this. We're going to start developing out some functionality for steps in the project. And what I mean by that is creating functions rather than just writing one line of code and then running the cell. This cell won't run because there's nothing there. In the beginning, when I first started out, that's what I would do. I would just run countless lines of code in countless cells and then keep running it. And then eventually, even if I was way down below in another part of the notebook, I would have to rewrite the same code I'd already written somewhere up here. So that's why we're going to start creating functions so that we can write code once. It might take a little bit of time to begin with, but we can reuse those functions later on. And that's what I want you to start thinking about in your workflows. If you're thinking, hey, I'm going to be pre-processing some data here, maybe I might need that functionality later. So I'll turn it into a function rather than just a one-off cell. So let's do that. To pre-process our images into tensors, we're going to write a function which does a few things. Now this pre-processing function will be specific to images, but the concept remains the same. Whatever data you're working with, you're probably going to have to turn it into some form of tensor. So we want to take an image file path as input. That's what we've got so far. We've got image file paths. We want to use TensorFlow to read the file and save it to a variable. We'll probably call that variable image, nice and simple. 3, we want to turn our image, so the image variable, which will be a JPEG because that's the type of image file that we're dealing with, into tensors. 4, what should we do next? We need to resize the image. So because all of our images are different sizes, it's standard practice to usually resize all of your images, image classification or some kind of deep learning pipeline with images, into a standardized size. So we'll resize the image to be a shape of 224. Now, I want you to have a think about it without even having hands-on experience with reshaping an image. Why might it be important to have it? Now, this size can be arbitrary, but why might it be important to have images of a similar size when you're working with them? Finally, return the modified image. Now, we've got 5 steps there for the function. You might be thinking, wow, how can I do that? Well, I want you to have a look at a resource here. So TensorFlow data loading. Here we go. So I'll leave this as an aside that you can start to read of how to load data into TensorFlow. So this is a really good section to check out. So TensorFlow guide data, I'll leave that in the resources section as an attachment. If you want to check it out, I just spend 10 minutes reading through here. Maybe you could spend 10 minutes over the next couple of days. Even if you don't understand it, just starting to get some of the concepts together. And now, as for tutorials, there should be another one here. I think load and pre-process data. So this is another valuable one. We come here. So this is what we're going to be doing, loading images. My problem is trying to load images, and I want to know how to turn them into tensors. So I go to tutorials, I look up load data, and I look up how to load images. And then you could read through here. So I'll make sure that I link these two resources, and after you finish this video, I want you to read through them for about 10 minutes each. So let's go back. Let's build this function out here. But before we do, I just want to give you a demonstration of what an image actually looks like if we were to read it in, and what a tensor looks like. So let's convert an image to a NumPy array. Right here. Before we do, let's see what importing an image looks like. So convert to NumPy array. Remember how I said tensors are very similar to multi-dimensional NumPy arrays or matrices? That's what we're going to see now. So we're importing just a matplotlib function imread, which stands for image read. I'm going to save image to imread. Let's get file names 42. Remember, file names is just a list of file paths to our training images, which is up here. Dog vision, training images. And then we want to check image.shape. Okay, so this is our image here. This is height, width. Actually, I always get confused. But that's why we kind of reshape them to be like a square image so that height and width doesn't really matter. I believe it's height, width, color channel. And what I mean by color channel is red, green, and blue pixels. So if we go here, what is a color channel? Channel RGB color sample. So this is what an image is made up of. Red, green, and blue colors. I'll let you dive a little bit more into that yourself, but you're just going to have to trust me that each pixel in an image here is some combination of red, green, and blue values. And they range from 0 to 255. So if we have a look at our image, which is a NumPy array, it should be, there we go, values between 0 and 255. So if we go image.max, maybe this will tell us, 255, and image.min, 0. There we go. So red, green, and blue pixel values between 0 and 255. That is literally what our image is. Now, it's in a NumPy array. At the moment, remember how I said tensors are very similar to NumPy arrays? So let's turn this into a tensor, and we can do that. You can turn almost anything into a tensor by using tf constant. Now, if we read the docstring, creates a constant tensor from a tensor-like object. Beautiful. You can read a little bit more into that, but remember our motto, if in doubt, run the code. So that's what we're going to practice. Let's see what this does. We've got the exact same values. Actually, let's demonstrate this. We want image, and maybe only up to 2. Same with tf constant. So the only difference here is that now we've got it in a tensor of shape 2, 353, and now it's shape 2, 353. We've indexed it to only show 2. But if you see, this is an array, NumPy, and this is a tensor. The only difference here is that this tensor is in TensorFlow, and now it's able to run on a GPU. So a lot faster compute. So our GPU will be able to find patterns in these numbers a lot faster than what our CPU, which is on my current machine, my MacBook Pro, will be able to find patterns in these. Let's go here, turn image into a tensor. So now we've seen a little bit of the basics behind what an image is composed of, what kind of data, pixel values, red, green, or blue between 0 and 255. We've seen what an image looks like in a NumPy array, and we've seen what an image looks like in a tensor. Let's finally get to our function which has to do these 5 steps. So what we might do to save this video from getting too long, I know I said we were going to check out write a function, but I think it's good to build some intuition before we actually do write this function. We'll build this function in the next video. So in the meantime, try import one of your own images here. You can choose any file name number and then just have a play around with the different values and try turning it into a tensor.